Hey guys, Thomas the Genie here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Hellraiser 2022. And if you end up enjoying this full review, then you can check out the links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second and third will head you over to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and the channel. And fourth, to my Discord server, where you can join it and join other smaller YouTubers and discuss and get all that good stuff. And shilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into Hellraiser 2022. So, the original Hellraiser came out a while ago, obviously. And I actually rewatched the original Hellraiser after seeing this. Just the first one. Apparently, I didn't even know this. There's like 7 of these movies that I'm trying to catch up on right now, but I do feel comfortable enough reviewing the 2022 version of Hellraiser with just the knowledge of the original movie kind of now recent in my mind. So, I actually didn't see a trailer for this that often, but I did see some reviews start popping up, so that was the main reason I caught on to this remake happening. It's actually not too surprising to see this remake, as we've seen other horror movies be remade over the time. Like, we have had a Jason remake, we've had a Freddy remake, we've had a Chucky remake. So Hellraiser isn't so surprising to see come here with the remake as well. Though I would probably say out of all of the ones I've seen originally, I probably would say that Hellraiser would probably be one of the more difficult ones to achieve due to its graphic nature and like torture and all that stuff like that. But it is what it is. So anyways, we get to our little plot summary here now. So let's get into it. So we start with a woman who meets with a man named Mr. Vaught, which I believe is the name of the character in the original movie, if I remember this correctly. Again, there are certain details I didn't catch in even watching the original again, so I do apologize if I misremember those types of details, like a name specifically. Anyway, we're in some place in Massachusetts, and we're starting to follow some guy named Joey as he meets up with a woman named Serena. And he goes, and she tells him to go into this room. They're at this party, by the way, where he is guided to this tiny cylinder thing. And Vaught comes down to tell him, this Joey character, to figure out this puzzle. So he attempts to do so. I guess he's getting paid to do this. So this is why he's so, whatever about it. Yeah, I'll do it, whatever. He does so. In the process, gets stabbed by the puzzle piece jabbing out at him as Vaught begins to lock the doors. Thus, we see Joey grabbed by the vintage chains that are very akin to the Hellraiser, I guess, series. And after the fact, we cut to a pair of individuals having the good old sex. Cut to our sometime later. Trevor, and as well as what we're going to see come of him. The pair we'll get to in a bit. We have Trevor, who is like the guy in the relationship, or that might be the brother. I've gotten the names mixed up a little bit there. No, Trevor is the other. No, he is the couple guy. Sorry, because either Matt or Colin are. I think Matt is the brother of Riley, the main character. And then we have one final character named Nora. So yeah, Trevor is the boyfriend in this relationship. So we have two couples and one sort of tag along with Nora in the process of our little cast here. Living in, at least most of them seem to be hanging around, but Riley decides to hang at Trevor's place instead. So she talks about how she's rather desperate to get some extra money, and he mentions how there's this shipment coming by of this really rich stuff. So, despite the potential badness of this, she proceeds to agree. So they sneak in together, and they find the small safe. And in the smaller safe, they find a cube. The cube that is very distinctive to, again, the Hellraiser series. We then proceed to cut to our other couple, Colin and Matt, who are in bed currently. They're just chilling, reading a book. Nothing crazy going on there. But Matt gets up and he's starting to worry about his sister. So he heads out. All the while, Riley is bagging up and getting ready to head to the car. She takes some pills in the process. And she's bringing the cube with her. So we see her start to mess with the cube a little bit. And then she goes unconscious from messing with the cube. And sees a very vague figure in the distance, but it is of one of the many Hellraisers. Or, they don't actually use the word Chirobots or whatever they're called in the original. I forget what they're called. Like the group of them. Like the movie's called Hellraiser, but they have like a specific group name that the movie, like the original movie, calls them, and they're not called that in this movie, I don't think. Though this movie does work on the lore, I suppose, of them. And a voice calls out. And we see Matt awaken. So he rushes over to get to her, but in the process he eventually stabs himself on the cube thing. So we see the blood seep into the cube, and as he goes off into the sink, the room begins to transform. This is very much, again, in line with what you see in the Hellraiser movies. Now, the only distinction I will say right away is that, at least in the first one, and I think in the second one as well, because those are the first two I rewatched, there's typically someone who comes back from the dead at the beginning of both of these movies. That plot point is not relevant to the remake here. They don't have someone coming back from the dead. So there's that to remove from the equation of Hellraiser. But nonetheless, we see that Matt is now gone, and Colin is rightfully upset, as well as Riley is as well. But she kind of gets over it a little bit quicker, I guess. She goes to Trevor and decides that they're just gonna get a little bit frisky again. So, in the process of after the fact, she sees a skull monster briefly, so she's freaking out still. So she wants to investigate further into what this shipment was all really about. So they go to somebody who was involved in this whole thing, and they come across some woman named Serena, who mentions Vought, so she's someone who worked for Pym. Riley shows her the cube, and thus, at some point, she is then stabbed by the cube, and we see her, eventually, when the others, her and Trevor begin to leave, that Serena ends up in a changed location, an alternative location, and starts to run from the Cenobites or whatever they're called. And we see Riley after the fact, after Serena meets her doom, looking up some info on this Vought guy, and how he was an occult collector. So she really wants to head to the estate at this point, as well as trying to find her brother on top of that. So she goes to the estate alone with the cube. She sneaks in, does the whole vintage hello, calling out hello in a horror movie, which is like one of those cliches that, depending on what type of horror movie, it's super annoying, and here it's super irrelevant, so it's kind of unnecessary. There was no one there, so I'm not sure why she was doing it. Anyway, so she starts messing with some switches, seeing what they do. And she sees, as she investigates the house further, that this guy, Vought, has drawings of these beings as the Cenobites. I'll just call them Cenobites for simplicity. I don't remember if that's the exact name, but that's as close as I can remember it to being, so that's what I'll call them for the sake of simplicity. Anyway, so she reads the notes about the cube, and this is where we get a lot of lore about what the cube can do. In this version, it appears like through each process of somebody getting sacrificed by the cube, it enters a different configuration, and the further into the configuration you go, the more you can potentially ask for when it's your turn to, like, you know, call to the Hellraiser group, the Cenobites. So we'll learn even more about that as the movie progresses as well. So she begins to hear Matt's voice in the distance, and she even begins to hug the false Matt as she sees him, or a being that looks like him anyways, but feels the blood on his back and knows that this is not quite right. And the others do eventually get there, pretty conveniently a little bit, but Trevor knew that she was heading there, I think? I don't remember. I think she might have said something, I don't remember. I didn't put that in my notes, so that might have not happened. It might have just been a convenience. Anyway, point being is that they're all there with her now. So Riley goes over what she thinks is the best configuration to, go about doing this, and is called the Resurrection configuration. She figures that Matt is dead, so the Resurrection configuration would be the ideal solution to go for her anyways. So, we have one of our typical dumb moments where Nora splits off from the group and then gets trapped in the secret room. She gets stabbed by a mysterious figure with the cube, because the cube gets, like, taken or, like, misplaced and then taken by this mysterious man, and is chasing her throughout this little secret area. And then they flee. The lot of them all flee back to the van, and while they're trying to get out of this place, they're all yelling at each other. Nora's in the back. Nora, in the process of, being in the back, gets pulled away. Despite being in a van, she gets pulled away into a different location. However, no, not however quite yet, but the chains, we do see them come at her. We see the Cenobites, take a little bit more time with her. And just as Riley is about to crash her car, she sees the end of the torment section happening in the reflection of a mirror. So there's that interesting little tidbit, I guess, is that you'd be able to see their world through a reflection, whatever that's supposed to mean. Anyways, Trevor and Colin, argue about what to do next. All the while, she's separated from the two of them, and Pinhead, the main Hellraiser of the lot, begins to talk to her and forces her to the box in like a blood way. So she's not gonna have the best ending. Let's say that for sure, because Hellraiser's not known for that. That's for sure. Anyways, Cullen struggles to get up, and as more of the Cenobites start appearing more visibly now, they go after Trevor and Riley. They seem to mostly pass by Colin in this process. However, Riley actually does something really clever, and this is like probably my favorite part, or one of my, like the moment where I was like, yeah, they actually did something really smart in the movie. She stabs the creature with the box, because it was indicated that whoever gets stabbed with the box, she was told this, not even that long ago, that it would be, it would take that, whoever it was, it could be anybody, as Pinhead literally just told her. So, indeed, the chains come out, they grab the creature, and it is ripped apart. So if only they had learned that earlier and just kept using the box against them, which is something that happens, I think that's in the sequel that happens in, where she uses the box directly, but has that more funky, like, early, like, effect where it's like they glow yellow. I think that's the sequel. Anyway, so they all go back to the mansion, seeing how they're getting, bombarded with more of these Cenobites. And we see that they re-block the entrance with the metal contraption that was in there to begin with. Then we see the reveal of Vought. He was alive this whole time, except he seems to have a metal contraption in his chest, in the front of his chest as well as the back of his chest. And he seems to be the one who had stabbed Nora earlier in the movie, it would appear. We also learn at this point in the movie that Trevor was one of the individuals working directly under Vought. And Riley, once again, continuing her pretty clever way of thinking at this point in the movie, should try to lure another one in, since they can't seem to proceed inside the building, and then stab that one to get further into the configuration, since she was forced to do so anyways. So, right, might as well get another one. So that's exactly what they tried to do anyways. So Riley heads outside alone for the time being, and they manage to indeed trick one of the Cenobites back inside. However, we see the box as she's like running from it, because it like unleashes like from its very stable sort of vibe to going hands out and chasing like wildly. So she unfortunately drops the box in the process of trying to flee from it. And thus, in this little contraption, Vought stabs Cullen. So Cullen's also not doing so hot right now. And Vought begins to talk about how, to her, as she's like separated through a room, and the Cenobite that was chasing her is like stuck on one side, she's on the other side of the bars, so she really can't go anywhere. So he's sort of like talking to her, like, through that degree of separation, about how he got his wish, but it did cause him to get that whole chest piece. So this is sort of akin to the monkey's paw, for those of you who don't know what that is. It's a reference to, well, a movie, but the idea behind that is that you do get a wish of sorts, but typically there is always a catch with the monkey's paw. There's always something that you must sacrifice. And in this instance, it was only really just getting that torture device in him. So it seems to be like the the trade-off is he's like saying how it's not worth it, and how they only are designed to make you suffer. And we see Vought wanting to finish this, tell Trevor to unlock the doors to the outside so the rest of them can start coming in. So they all start coming in. We see Colin have to get further separated from the group as he's beginning to suffer for one of the Cenobites. And Pinhead begins to talk to Vought directly about wanting the power configuration, because I believe at this point in the movie that is the current configuration that is on anyways. So Riley, once again, since she was betrayed by Trevor, stabs Trevor. So she figures, and she's talking with the one that's like torturing Colin right now, so she's like, hey, if I give you one, that was the deal, so I'll give you the guy who traded me anyways, so I'll give you him, you let Colin go. So the Cenobite does agree to this, and grabs up Trevor instead, and Colin is let go, injured but not dead, so the two of them are now safe. As Trevor is tortured. Meanwhile, Vought is pulled by a massive chain in the chest, pulled up into this pyramid thing in the backwards pyramid thing in the sky, which is almost like the way it comes down is like kind of almost indicative of like they're almost like alien creatures almost. Anyways, so Riley and Colin, are almost out, but Riley is confronted by 3 of the Cenobites, Pinhead included, and she is told that, you can have any of the configurations since we've gotten this far in the process, and she chooses nothing, because of what she was told earlier by Vought. That talk to her had convinced her that, even if she had chosen the resurrection configuration, that the consequence of that would probably be awfully terrifying. And I actually do like this, because it is the horror of, it does become a really sufficient horror unknown of like, well, what would have happened if she did pick the resurrection configuration? What would have been the outcome? We see the outcome of Vought, so we know something bad would have likely happened, but what would it have been? So your mind begins to race of being like, oh, maybe it could be this. What is the catch of resurrecting somebody? So it leaves that to the imagination, and I do really like that it does build up that sort of like, ooh, there's enough there to get you to that place of being like, ooh, okay. But nonetheless, she does choose nothing. She doesn't choose any of the configurations. We follow Vought as we see him being ripped apart and being essentially turned into a new Cenobite / Hellraiser, or a Cenobite. And the only 2 to make it out are Riley and Cullen in this movie. And that was Hellraiser 2022. And for what it's worth, I think this movie's pretty good. I think the latter half is significantly better than the first half, where we see Riley really step up, really start to put some really clever ideas, putting them to good use, using the cube against the Cenobite, using somebody else who had betrayed her as a tool to get further in this process that she was forced into. Now, admittedly, she's, and sort of the whole idea about this is that does start out as a pretty negative character. She was someone who is on substances, on pills, as we saw in the beginning of the movie, and someone who really wasn't that well connected to Matt either. But I do see a character developing, though. That is what sets this movie apart from me, is that, and here's the thing, is that, yeah, you don't like Trevor anymore by the end of the movie, but I wouldn't say I dislike the rest of the characters either, though. They aren't terribly complex by any means. Nora being one of them, Matt being one of them, and Colin being one of them. They're not terribly complex. Like, I would barely call them characters for the most part, unfortunately. That is the downside of this, is that they're not terrible people that you want to die, but they're not great characters either. They're just sort of generic. But I do feel like, just, to counteract that, I do feel like, again, we do see it does become a lot more transparent that the main character who we are following, that being Riley, does go through a pretty noticeable transformation of when we first see her to where she ends up by the end of the movie. And again, just using that more strategic thought process about how to use the cube, how to make deals with these Cenobites, how to go through all that. So yeah, I would say pretty good. And from the original movie, I would say the whole torture stuff doesn't really take place. Like, there's a lot of build-up to all that in the original movie. So I would say this movie does it pretty sufficiently. So yeah, I would say pretty decent horror movie, or a remake for that matter. I'd probably say out of the remakes I've seen, it's probably one of the better ones, honestly. If I'm being completely objective here, I probably would give it like a 6 out of 10. I don't remember what I gave the other remakes. I probably would have lowered them, or, they're probably, or of a similar standard around there, if anything. Again, it's been a while since I've seen the remakes of Freddy and, like, Jason, those types. But point being is that, yeah, I would give it a 6 out of 10, and I do think that the 6 primarily comes from the lack of character from this being the primary reason that I wouldn't give it anything above a 6. But beyond that, I would say that it does deserve a 6 for, again, having the main character develop, having her, build up a little bit more of a strategy here, having her be build up that intelligence, build up, all that stuff. And all the gore and ripping apart and torture, there's just enough of that. I'm not, like, craving it. I'm not, like, one of those people, but, like, that is sort of like the point of Hellraiser, or like, that is there's a lot of that going on throughout the franchise, I would suspect. Again, still going through it, the other original movies, I think there's like 8 of them or 7 of them. I forget how many of them there are. Anyways, so yeah, that is my full review of Hellraiser. So, if my review helps you decide whether or not you're going to see this remake, then I hope you enjoyed this full review. And if you ended up enjoying it as well, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. 1 will head you over to my petition, 2nd and 3rd to my Patreon and PayPal, and 4th to my Discord server. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated, and until next time everyone, bye bye!